I wanted to talk about some news that's breaking. As all of you know, I warned on the 1st of July of an likely attempted assassination against former President Donald Trump. And I issued that warning in part because of the attempted assassination of the Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, who was shot 5 times on May 15th and miraculously and thankfully did not succumb to his injuries, but was in quite intensive care for some time and was unable to attend the NATO summit. I said this of Trump because, like Fico, he has opposed continuing to arm Ukraine in a war which Ukraine is going to lose, is losing, you might say already has lost. But there is a desire on the part of the Democratic Party, which seems to be run by the British Empire, to keep up appearances that Ukraine is winning, or they can win if we arm them enough. And therefore we can destroy Russia, which is really just delusional and insane. Why should it be the mission of the United States to destroy Russia? Now, I just want to show you some breaking news. So I warned July 1st. My newspaper, The New Federalist, came out on July 5th, the 4th of July issue. Then indeed, there was an assassination attempt against Donald Trump at his Butler, Pennsylvania rally. There were all kinds of very suspicious circumstances surrounding that, questions that need to be answered. I'm not going to go into that here. What I do want to bring up is the desperate attempt to change the subject. And this gets to why I am running for U.S. Senate and why I am qualified to be your U.S. Senator from New York, unlike Chuck Schumer, against whom I ran in 2022, or Kirsten Gillibrand, who is sitting on the Intelligence Committee. So we're going to take a look at a few of these slides. So here we have it. Right on schedule. Pakistani man with ties to Iran charged in foiled assassination plot, potentially targeting Trump, DOJ says. Now, they admit that he has no ties to Thomas Crooks. He apparently, who knows what he's done? We don't know if, and Asif Merchant 46 allegedly worked with a supposed hitman to try and kill a political figure. They don't even know if the target was actually Donald Trump or someone else. I would like to say something about Iran because, as you know, it seems clear that Bibi Netanyahu got the green light from some lunatics in the U.S. administration to go ahead and provoke a war with Iran by carrying out a number of assassinations. And we seem to be well on course to a war with Iran. Why do we want a war with Iran? Why do we want a war with Russia or China? Well, because we are bankrupt and we don't want any other nations in the world to develop. And on behalf of the British imperial system, the United States behind our nuclear arsenal is supposed to be dictating to the world, even as we destroy ourselves. So I wanted to just show you a picture. This is something Lyndon and Helga Zepp-LaRouche put forward in 1996, right after LaRouche got out of prison. Helga LaRouche said this became a possibility once Germany was reunified, that you could have massive economic development and trade across Eurasia. You could have a booming economy. You could eradicate poverty. But I want you to particularly look at this region, Southwest Asia, or they call it the Middle East. Why? Because it's the middle. And think about the British, the idea of the great game, Samuel P. Huntington, Zbigniew Brzezinski. What is the idea? You have to keep war. You can never allow the development of internal regions. So look right here. Where is Israel, Palestine? Smack in the middle of the connection between Asia, Africa, and Europe. As people may know, Russia is building an exciting new north-south transport corridor to link Russia with ports both in Iran and in Pakistan. China is building the China Economic Corridor, or CPEC. Yeah, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor right here. Enormous potential for growth. If you think about the United States, the Transcontinental Railroad, the Erie Canal, the incredible industry and progress that developed as a result of these transport corridors. So the world is moving in this direction, except for the US. Here, if you have a train that goes over 40 miles an hour, it might derail. We have 3 train derailments per day in our country right now, and apparently our policy is to destroy anyone else who thinks of building a railroad. Here's just a close-up so you can see why Iran is so strategic. Look at what it borders: Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, over here, Azerbaijan, Armenia. Think about the conflict that continues to brew there. Just a little north is Georgia, then Russia, Turkey, Iraq, Kuwait, and then over here, Israel, Palestine. So it's a big country with a very important history. A lot of contributions to scientific progress came from Persia. We want to blow them back to the Stone Ages, apparently. That's what Congresswoman Claudia Tenney told me. If we just destroy this country, everything's going to be fine. What a bunch of nonsense. So we have this patsy, or this diversionary story, maybe to keep people from finding out what actually happened in the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. And I would like to remind people of something right here from New York. The Newburgh Four. People remember that? This was after 9/11. They picked up these 4 guys in Newburgh and claimed that they were somehow involved in the case. Then they were acquitted. At least 3 of them were released from prison. I just want to remind you how this worked. In 2008, and this was the plot, supposed plot, the FBI paid informant Shahid Hussein met James Cromity in the parking lot of a mosque in Newburgh, New York. This was a town with a high poverty rate, large Muslim population. Hussein befriended Cromity, who was having hard times, and basically tried to lure Cromity into committing an act of terrorism, of targeting people for assassination, blowing something up, a little bit like, if you remember, the alleged plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer, right? What was the idea? Some poor down and out schmuck who's living in a basement, just broken up with his girlfriend. The FBI agent comes in, offers a bunch of money, and says, I'll pay you for this. The FBI even admitted that Cromity really didn't seem to be interested. He wouldn't have done anything. And in fact, he cut off contact from Hussein for a few months until he became really desperate, was about to be evicted. Then he thought he wanted the money, so he got interested. The FBI is the problem here, okay? The Department of Justice. Look at the targeting. They think they have a right to tell us whom we should be voting for. Now, why is this coming up again? Why was I interested in this? And let me just tell you something about my background and why I am proud to say I am on the LaRouche party line. Here is a document. I hope you can see it. November 23rd, 1973, to the director of the FBI from their New York bureau on Lyndon Hermile LaRouche Jr., then known as Lynn Marcus, but Lyndon LaRouche. Okay, October 29th, 73. In viewing New York case file, it is noted that information has been received that the CPUSA, that is Communist Party USA, is conducting an extensive background investigation on the subject, that is Lyndon LaRouche, for the purpose of ultimately eliminating him and the threat of the NCLC on Communist Party operations. Several sources have furnished this information to the New York office, and this information has appeared in the Daily World newspaper several times. NCLC sources have advised that the subject, LaRouche, is the controlling force behind the NCLC and all of its activities. So here you have the FBI colluding with the Communist Party to assist them in, quote unquote, ultimately eliminating Lyndon LaRouche, and that is back in 1973. Next, LaRouche runs for president. He runs in 76, 80, 84, 88. This is an article from April 4th, 1986, the New York Times, when LaRouche Associates won major Democratic Party primaries in Illinois, and the media went bonkers. Headline, LaRouche savors fame that may ruin him. Washington, April 3rd. Since his emergence from obscurity 2 weeks ago, Lyndon LaRouche has used his newfound prominence to promote his extremist theories. They don't tell you what they are, clearly relishing the national attention that Democratic leaders hope will destroy his chances of mainstream support. The upset victories of two LaRouche candidates in last month's Illinois Democratic primary have brought him a barrage of national attention, unlike anything his movement has experienced in its 20-year odyssey from the far left to its present eccentric positions, which defy description. It does defy description if you're a moron from the New York Times or you work for the FBI. Democratic leaders were stunned by the fact that his associates won, and they say LaRouche believes the Queen of England is a drug dealer, which he didn't say, although she did sit on the board of the largest drug money laundering bank in history, HSBC. Next, LaRouche lawyers introduced 3 Kissinger FBI. So by now, LaRouche has been indicted by Robert Mueller in Massachusetts, Boston, March 17th. Lawyers for Lyndon H. LaRouche introduced today 3 letters between Henry A. Kissinger and the FBI and said they were evidence of a government effort to harass Mr. LaRouche. It turns out that Oliver North, Oliver Buck Revell, the FBI's executive assistant director, responded with 2 letters. This is what we exposed. A government prosecutor said later he might put Mr. Kissinger on the stand to rebut the harassment charge. The LaRouche lawyers, in turn, said they would welcome an opportunity to cross-examine the former Secretary of State, whom Mr. LaRouche has frequently called a Soviet spy. Now, I just have to say, if LaRouche was so obscure, so non-influential, why is Henry Kissinger, a former Secretary of State or then Secretary of State, so interested in eliminating LaRouche that he is collaborating with the FBI, which had earlier been collaborating with the Communist Party to shut this man up? What were they afraid of? And this later led, I will continue, to a 1986 raid. 400 FBI agents, U.S. Marshals surrounded LaRouche's home, then his offices, seizing thousands of documents. This is Leesburg, Virginia, Loudoun County, Virginia. There they are with the sledgehammer to bang down the doors. Everything very dramatic. Okay, and LaRouche ultimately was later sentenced to 15 years in prison on conspiracy charges. Numbers of his associates were also framed up in a ridiculous case that they were involved in a conspiracy to not repay loans, one of whom, Mike Billington, was given a 77-year jail sentence. So why was I concerned when Chuck Schumer said that it was foolish of General Flynn or Donald Trump to want to audit our intelligence agencies, that they would have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you? Because I believe our intelligence agencies should be audited. No one should be allowed to conduct affairs on behalf of we, the people, in secret without informing us, and especially against the interests of the American people. So this overreach has now gone very far, and we will see what came up next, which has provoked my discussion with you this morning. So I heard that Tulsi Gabbard apparently has been placed on the Quiet Skies list of the Transport Security Agency, and I began looking into it, and here you have something, Congressional Research Service, January 15th, 2021, Aviation Security Measures and Domestic Terrorism Threats. After the January 6, 2021 security breach of the United States Capitol, some members of Congress have advocated to restricting the air travel of individuals who may seek to incite or carry out further violence. Now, as far as I know, the 4 or 5, I think it was 5 people who died on January 6th at the Capitol were all Trump supporters. It was not the police. One officer died in the hospital later, and he was not beaten with a fire extinguisher, as they determined. So the whole thing is a kind of a fraud, but they now have a no-fly list. This is why Senator Marsha Blackburn, as you might recall, was talking about putting Columbia University students, that is, students who protest genocide, will be added to a no-fly list. Can you imagine that? If you have the wrong political belief, if you are a supporter of Donald Trump, if you don't like the what's happening in your school, you can be added, you can be considered a domestic terrorist and put on the no-fly list. I consider that a terrible violation of our First Amendment and many other amendments. So here we go. This is the story about Tulsi Gabbard. They report that who is Tulsi Gabbard? She was in Congress apparently for 4 terms. She's in the National Guard. She's served our nation overseas. She ran for president. We're supposed to believe, you can disagree with her. You might disagree with her policies. She clearly considers herself a patriotic American who loves the nation enough to offer herself as a candidate for high office, which I can assure you is no easy thing. She served in the U.S. Congress. Really? And this absurd article, apparently, this baby, who was the son of a January 6th defendant, was placed on the terrorist list. And you can see here, he's obviously causing a great deal of danger and threat. In fact, he might toss his stuffed animal at someone if he wakes up at as the plane lands or takes off. So again, absurd. And I would like to actually get this list. I imagine someone filed a FOIA request to find out who is on this list, but it is really a complete violation. So that's the end of the slideshow. Why was LaRouche such a threat that they would not even allow him to get remotely near the presidency? Because he was a physical economist and he identified the billionaire criminals behind the takedown of the Bretton Woods system, starting with Schultz's convincing of Richard Nixon to decouple the dollar from gold, the Jeffrey Epstein in part, and Alan Greenspan imposed repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated the banks, which would protect depositors from being on the hook for all these bailouts that we've been paying for since 2008. And now we are at the moment which Henry Kissinger said he feared the most, which is the total meltdown of the transatlantic system, long overdue. These billionaires would like to plunge us into war. Maybe if they can survive in a cave deep underground somewhere for 10 or 20 years after they annihilate the rest of the planet, they will get to run the world. This is all complete insanity. That's why I am running for U.S. Senate. That's why I'm not affiliated with any party. That's why I am proud to call myself a LaRouche candidate. And I would urge Americans to join me, to have courage to call out these rogue intelligence agencies, to stand up for peace. The United States should not be shipping weapons anywhere in the world, not to Israel, not to Ukraine, not to Taiwan. We need to retool those companies to build modern infrastructure in this nation. And we should look at our proud history of the Erie Canal, the Transcontinental Railroad, the Tennessee Valley Authority, and the great projects that are being built in the global South, and collaborate with that. We could create millions of high-paying American jobs. We could solve the problems at our borders if we were not interested in human trafficking, drug money laundering, and terrorism, and overthrowing other governments. So please study this. Don't be a fool. Don't be duped by the nonsense in the mainstream media. Let me just add, don't forget, John Brennan was the head of the CIA. Now he's at MSNBC. So what does that tell you about American mainstream media?